Sorry.
Had you been recording?
No,
Do we need
but
to
it's
go?
okay. No, it's okay. It's okay. We'll put it in the minutes. You know, the roll call was called and so forth. Sorry.
Okay, all right. All right, so we're gonna review the minutes from the September 28th, 21 meeting. Did everybody have the opportunity to review the minutes, and did you receive them? I guess I should ask first. Did everyone receive the minutes? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from the September 28th, 2021 meeting?
I motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Does the board have any discussion or corrections regarding the minutes? Anyone? Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say
Aye.
I,
aye. Okay, all against? Or anyone against, please say nay. The motion to approve carries. We will now receive a 5-minute presentation by the applicant agency for each program that was listed on this evening's agenda. Each agency will receive a 30-second warning as the 5-minute time limit is approaching. Diego will monitor that for us. Each presentation will be followed by a 5-minute question and answer session between board members and the agency regarding the program or application. Members of the public are welcome to listen to the presentations, but will not take part in the discussion or the question and answer session. Time limits will be strictly enforced on both the presentation and the question and answer session. Since I'm a voting member, I am going to turn it over to Carol, who will introduce the agencies.
Okay, the first agency presenting tonight is Hands of Hope. The program is also called Hands of Hope, and Charlotte Evans will be speaking on behalf of this program. And Charlotte, it is over to you.
Thank you. I apologize. I'm going to be reading my statement because I can't say what I want to say if I just start talking. So please bear with me. And thank you for the opportunity to talk with you about Hands of Hope. Tonight, I would like to tell you some of the participants who have gone through the 10 weeks of training and have their lives changed for the better. I can't tell you that we have success with everyone who goes through the program, but there have been many just since the time that I started in Hands of Hope as a mentor back in 2011. Sadie had grown up in a middle-class family in Austin, but she was told she was no longer a member of the family when she married a Hispanic man. After the birth of her third child, her husband left her. She had 3 small children, no income, needed food and diapers. She wrote 2 hot checks to try to get through. Her husband's brother came to her rescue, bringing her food and diapers. However, she went to county jail anyway. The brother took care of the children while she was in jail, but when she got out, she felt defeated. The brother continued to help her with the children, and eventually they fell in love and got married. As happy as she was at this time, she was afraid to go out in public. She came to Hands of Hope when her children were in junior and senior high. It was in my first semester of volunteering and as I had become a mentor. When Sadie graduated, she wanted to give back as a volunteer at Hands of Hope. So she volunteered to be the daycare teacher at that time. She then became a van driver, picking up the ladies who didn't have transportation. She continues to this day driving the van and helping in the kitchen. She no longer fears going into public. She has driven vans for various churches, bringing people to services and getting children to summer reading programs. Recently, she has been hired by the Salvation Army to head up the Red Kettle program at Christmas. Maria came to Hands of Hope when she was 64. We quickly understood that she could not read. Through our reading teacher, she began slowly to learn. She also took part in all the classes and began to be more outgoing. We invited her back for another 10-week semester, and her reading took off. She was able to write her speech and to read it at graduation. Immediately, she told us that she wanted to help in some way at Hands of Hope. Beginning the next semester, she began helping preparing the lunches. These are brought in by volunteers from communities, but Maria accepts the food, sets the table, and makes the drinks and cleans up afterwards. She also helps set up for special occasions. She is part of our volunteers. Mariah came to Hands of Hope as a single mother working 2 jobs. We discovered that even though she had completed 12th grade, she had not been able to pass the end of course science test. So therefore, she didn't have a high school diploma. We asked her to contact the high school that she had attended and asked if she could test again. They told her she could test in the spring. One of the coordinators met with her weekly, and they studied the information that she needed. After graduation, she took the test and passed. She now has her high school diploma and only needs 1 job in customer relations to take care of she and her daughter. 2 ladies who had gone through Hands of Hope a few years ago graduated, and I felt that their lives had not been changed at all. One was a single mom of 6 children, and she was pregnant with her 7th. The other had 3 children, and she and her husband were not getting along. After graduation, she had a mental breakdown, and her husband sued her for custody of the children while she was in treatment. Then in the last few years, we tried to stay in touch with these ladies, but they move around, they change phone numbers, but we continued to pray for them. Then in the last year, I have heard from both of them. Priscilla, who had 7 children, is now happily married and involved with the church where she lives. Jacqueline is divorced from her husband and is in a healthy relationship with a good man.
30 seconds.
She has her children who are much older now. This is only a small sampling of the lives we have changed. In Hands of Hope, we often just plant seeds and pray that something will come of the love, acceptance, and education we pass on to these ladies. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And now we'll open the floor for questions, and there will be 5 minutes for questions and answers.
In your application, you mentioned mentors. How long are the mentors assigned to each woman? I'm sorry. Yeah.
They are assigned during the 10 weeks, and then we ask them to spend at least 6 months afterwards being in contact. Many spend many more, but the 6 months is the usual amount. But they have each other's phone numbers and can make contact at any time.
You also wrote if they wanted to continue with their education, they could. How many women have gone on to college?
Oh, college, we probably have had 2 that have gone on to college. Most of them go on for some kind of specialized training. We've sent ladies to dental assistance training and certified nursing assistant training, that kind of thing. But we are always open. We take 10% of whatever comes in grants that isn't specified for us for a particular area like transportation or childcare. And at the end of the calendar year, we take 10% of that and put in our scholarship fund. So right now we have around $9,000 in that scholarship fund.
Were I saw you guys were closed during the pandemic. You were unable to provide any type of services. For how long?
Well, during the pandemic, we were not able to have classes because all of the volunteers are older. We're all retired, and our church where we're situated was closed down for some time. So we weren't able to do the clothes giveaway, but we did do a lot of benevolence. And I think I put in the grant how much we have spent on benevolence. we will have our clothes giveaway this semester in 2 weeks.
How many women do you currently have in the class that just started?
Right, we currently have 4, which we were excited to get that because all of our advertising and everything has not been available during the pandemic. We had 8 ladies who submitted applications, but at the last minute or when they got ready to come, they were afraid, and that happens a lot.
I like how creative you were during the COVID shutdown, that even though, and I think Melina alluded to this, even though you were shut down during that time, the monies that you received, you were still able to give out as needed.
Absolutely. Much more than we received.
I saw that.
Luckily, we had some money there, and so we were able to do that. And I wrote some grants that were specifically for people who were suffering during the pandemic, and those helped also.
I also saw that you submitted a letter to the city asking if they wanted what you could do with the money that you had since you weren't having classes. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I appreciated the board allowing that. That helped.
Hi, Charlotte. Do you still
Right.
provide the lunches for the ladies?
Well, we don't, except for 1 day a week. We were doing lunches every day, but with COVID, there was a concern from the volunteers out in the community about bringing food in and that kind of thing. So we're only doing lunches on Thursday right now. We do a lot of snacks during the morning, and we've got cheese and crackers, and we've got breakfast bars, and we have yogurt and that kind of thing. So they don't go away hungry, but then we make a big deal about the Thursday luncheons.
Thank you.
Your classes are Monday through Thursday. From what time?
8:45 until 12:30 Monday through Wednesday, and then 1:30 on Thursday when we have lunch.
Are these ladies referred to you, or do you get referrals from other agencies?
We do get
That is
referrals from other agencies, but we put out a lot of flyers with the information and the application in places that these ladies would be going. And but we get a lot of referrals through True Choice.
Okay, thanks. And this, we'll have to call time.
All right,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
And just so you know, you are welcome to stay. Any member of the public can stay and listen. There will be no additional time for question and answers.
Thank you.
Okay. And then our next speaker will be Holly Cunningham Kaiser, and she represents Hayes Caldwell Women's Center. And as you can see on the agenda, they have 4 different applications. And so what I'll do is just each time I'll announce the program that she's going to be talking about, but she'll do each of the presentations. And she'll do what we have it set up as is 5 minutes for each program separately, and a 5-minute question and answer period after each of those 5-minute presentations. So Holly, I will turn it over to you.
Is there an order that you wanted us to go in with the?
Oh, I'm so
program?
sorry. I was supposed to announce that. Sexual assault and abuse is the first program on the agenda.
Okay, let me get my notes.
And if you want to take a minute to organize, here's how it is on the agenda. Next one is going to be the Marla Johnson Transitional Housing Program. After that, Children's Advocacy Center. And then the non-residential family violence. And then Diego, you probably know this, but don't start the 5 minutes yet. We'll give her a minute to get ready.
Okay. 1 second, I will share my screen and get that started for our presentation.
Okay.
Oh, It has screen share disabled.
Oh, 1 second. I'm gonna make you a co-host because I'm really not sure how to let you share your screen. That should do it though.
I did it.
Okay.
Share sound as well.
Yeah, so we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, so this is for our sexual assault services program. It's counseling and advocacy for victims of sexual assault. Last year, HCWC provided services to 693 victims of sexual assault. 258 of those were San Marcos residents. That's down from 316 in 2019, 293 in 2018, and 267 in 2017. On average, we receive about 500 helpline calls a year about sexual assault calls. And in 2020, we received 465 hotline calls from sexual assault victims. All our clients are evaluated quarterly with outcome surveys. And in our last quarter, 93% of the clients said they reported increased knowledge and understanding of their crime victims' rights due to the information and services they received. So we work with sexual assault victims to explain the legal process, and we will be a support system for them throughout the legal process if their case is prosecuted. We work with both victims that have currently experienced sexual assault, along with adults molested as children. Additionally, we facilitate the SART team, which consists of the same program, the Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner program, along with members of law enforcement and prosecutors.
This is Emma with the Hayes Caldwell Women's Center Heart Team. I just received a call from Krista's Santa Rosa Hospital about a sexual assault that occurred in San Marcos. Her name is Natalie, and she's at the hospital now. She's 25 years old.
Okay, I'm on my way.
Every day, members of our community experience violence and abuse. Sometimes it means they have to go to the hospital. When that happens, HCWC is there to help.
Hi Natalie, my name is Sophia and I'm an advocate with Hayes Caldwell Women's Center. I just wanted to let you know that we are here for you and our services are free and confidential. I wanted to give you some information so you can see your options and to discuss what you would like to do.
Our Heart Team advocates respond night or day, 365 days of the year to area hospitals to offer support to people who have experienced violence and abuse as they process their emotions and trauma and navigate their way through the process of getting the help they need. Our advocates go through extensive training to know how to best work with individuals to help them feel comfortable and heard during this difficult time. When a sexual assault has occurred, a specially trained, trauma-informed nurse called a SANE nurse meets with the patient and can perform a sexual assault forensic exam at the request of the individual in order to make sure they are physically okay and to collect evidence. When a person experiences abuse, they often lose a sense of control they have over their own body, their circumstances, and their future. Our advocates empower them by giving them the choice of how to work through their own trauma. Our goal is to provide a support structure to give them the tools that they need to take back control of their life and move forward with a greater sense of strength and hope. If you're interested in joining our Heart Team, please contact us at volunteer@hcwc.org.
Last year, we responded to area hospitals 112 times, and of that 112, 102 were for sexual assault calls. We did see our numbers for Heart Team
30 seconds.
go down during the beginning of the pandemic, but they've been steadily increasing. Healing from sexual assault is often a lifelong journey, and HCWC helps victims when they're ready.
Okay, thank you very much. And let's start that 5-minute Q&A period.
In your application, you said that you serviced 550 children. How many were San Marcos?
In this application,
So we are on the sexual assault and abuse application.
sorry, yeah, this is an adult program. That's why I was confused by the question.
You have the right program.
I'm sorry?
I think maybe she didn't have the right program. Maybe she was looking at the wrong program.
Others could go ahead with questions while.
Yeah,
Joanne looks
well,
at it.
this is an adult program, but we did serve 268 from San Marcos adults in this program this year.
When you say adults, men and women, or just women?
Men and women. All our services are provided to women, men, and children. We do see the majority of the sexual assault cases that we work with men are adults molested as children, but we do also respond to the hospital on male sexual assaults. It's probably less than 5% of the calls per year, but we do provide counseling and services for them as well.
Yeah, I am on the right application. It is question number 2, and it's regarding the program for which funding is being requested. And you said last year alone, our forensic interviewers conducted 500 forensic interviews, and the program served a total of 550 children. So I was wondering, is that in the San Marcos area?
I don't know if something, I'm sorry, I don't know if something's out of order. That's question number 2 from the application for our Children's Advocacy Center, rather than the sexual assault and abuse program.
Am I still on the wrong one? Okay.
I'm curious if you can speak to how these services differ from like the Hays County like victim services that are provided through the county. I'm curious.
We're actually a resource for them. Victim services that are provided through the Hays County Sheriff's Department, along with San Marcos PD. Those are, they're for cases where prosecution is occurring. That's not a requirement on our part. But whenever we work in partnership with them, and whenever they have cases that require ongoing support, counseling, and resources, we provide those services. But we do partner with them for court accompaniment. If we have cases that are going through prosecution, we both work on those together. I'm sorry. To further on that, Megan, that's part of our that SAR team that we facilitate, which is the Sexual Assault Response Team. So we are the host agency for that, and it involves all the victim services from all the PDs, along with the SANE program, the prosecutor's office, and all the law enforcement agencies.
30 seconds.
Thanks for clarifying.
Also on the video, you mentioned training. How long is the training? Sorry.
To be a Heart Team advocate, it's a 40-hour training that's certified through the Attorney General's office. We do that 3 times a year. And if once you're an OAG certified advocate, you're allowed to be in the room with the with the victim whenever the exam is occurring. Otherwise, you're not allowed in.
You say that you go with them through the whole process. After the process, is there anything that you offer for them to continue with your services?
Absolutely. We do provide a limit of 6 months of individual counseling. However, there is no limit to the amount of counseling for group therapy. And as I said before, healing from sexual assault is really a
3 seconds,
lifelong
yeah.
process. Do I go ahead and just go into the next program?
I was about to just call it. So
Okay,
yes,
sorry.
That's
sure,
fine.
let's go ahead. Okay, and there's time. So the next program is Marla Johnson Transitional Housing. And here's Holly Cunningham Kaiser again for the Hayes Caldwell Women's Center.
Share my screen again. On March 27th, 1978, a group of about 40 women met in San Marcos to discuss how they could create some type of community program to benefit women in a personal and professional manner. The initial group quickly realized that survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse needed assistance, and the result of that meeting is the Hayes Caldwell Women's Center. Almost immediately, the group recognized that the lack of safe, affordable housing and childcare represented the greatest barriers for victims of abuse to achieve safety and success away from their abuser. Over 25 years ago, HCWC began exploring options for transitional housing with the city of San Marcos and Hayes County. The Morning Star Project was the first attempt to provide housing for victims of abuse in San Marcos. Population growth along the I-35 corridor has exploded, with San Marcos growing by 44% over the last 10 years, and that combined with the pre-existing affordable housing shortage has created an even more difficult situation for victims of abuse. We knew that we had an issue, so we came up with a plan, recruited partners, and now the dream of affordable housing is almost a reality.
Every day, HCWC serves victims of domestic violence who are forced to make the hard decision to leave an abusive home. Victims like Jessica. She is 8 months pregnant with her soon-to-be son. She came to us with her daughter, Laura, after a severe domestic violence incident that landed her in the hospital. After trying to make it work for the sake of her babies, she couldn't risk her life or her babies anymore. Why did she go back? Why does she stay? Two questions heard most often when talking about domestic violence and victims who either stay in their abusive relationships or go back after leaving. HCWC has been serving victims of family violence since 1978. By providing an emergency shelter, we were able to provide a safe home for victims and their children. But this was only temporary. There are two main barriers for victims trying to leave: affordable housing and childcare. The lack of affordable housing in our community is no secret to anyone who lives here. Being forced to choose between abuse and homelessness is never a choice anyone should have to make. At the heart of this project is our community's children. The impact of abuse and trauma on children is the cycle of violence this project hopes to interrupt. Research has shown children who live in an abusive home can experience a significant impact to their health and well-being. It can even shorten their lifespan. We are partnering with Community Action for quality on-site childcare, which includes an early Head Start and Head Start classroom for young children. HCWC will help adults and children by providing counseling to help with healing from abuse, advocacy to help with things like protective orders or court for custody, case management to help with job training, healthcare needs, school, and groups to help provide support in knowing they're not alone in their fight for independence.
So a quick thing, we were not able to see a video. I'm sorry, I didn't catch it. And then I didn't think to use chat to let you know until too late. So if there's
Could you hear it at all or anything?
we could hear it. And so I guess I kind of want to do a head nod. Do we want to have it replayed, y'all? I'm just looking at the screen. Do y'all want to see the video? If you do, nod your head. Sorry, I should give an instruction. No, I think we got the point. I'm only seeing a couple of head nods, a few. So I think we heard everything. So let's keep going.
I'm sorry, could you see the earlier part, the slides prior to the?
We saw everything you did for the sexual assault program.
Oh, but nothing for this one. Okay.
Nothing for that one, just FYI. Okay, so please just continue from that point. Sorry.
Okay. Well, prior to the beginning of the pandemic, with the completion of Marla's House still months away, we applied for and received special funding to provide rental assistance to help cover the expense and vehicle expense, along with childcare costs. And so while we knew that program was not sustainable long-term, it provided a glimpse of the impact that Marla's Place was going to have in the future. So included in the slides were outcomes from clients who participated in that program, one of which that talked about how because she was able to receive that rental assistance, it enabled her to work on repairing her credit and go back to school and get her certificate to be a nurse's aide. We had another who we not only were able to help with her housing,
30 seconds.
but help with her car expenses as well. And she and her kids feel like they're safe and can be successful for the first time. So that's what we expect this program to do long-term. It's 12 to 18 months of affordable supportive housing with wraparound services for victims of abuse.
Okay, thank you very much. And then let's start that 5-minute Q&A period.
What are your other wraparound services?
So the services, they'll have access to all of the non-residential program services, in addition to having an on-site case manager. So we'll have counseling services for them, job training, planning. We're going to bring in workshops to work with them on credit repair, budget management. We're working with some businesses that want to do job placement. So they would come in and hold training classes and then hire residents as well. And then one of the big assets for them, of course, will be the on-site childcare, which will make it where they're freed up and able to work.
Thank you.
You
How
guys
many
have this.
people can you accommodate with the affordable housing?
So it's 18 units. There'll be 2 1-bedroom units, 12 3-bedroom, and 4 4-bedroom. So we'll be able to accommodate very large families in some of them, but I believe we've said 54 people that we would be able to accommodate throughout the housing complex, if at max capacity.
And it's connected to the campus, right?
Yes, ma'am. It's directly, but it's on our existing campus. It's being constructed directly behind the McCoy Family Shelter. So it will be entered off of Davis Lane. Of course, it will have security fences and around it, like a normal apartment complex would have. The residents will have a passcode to get in.
Is it slated to be, is it going to be done, you think, in December?
It looks like they keep telling me yes on December, but every time they tell me yes on December, they also say barring any bad weather or future supply chain breakdowns. We've been very fortunate on that. The McCoys, of course, have been great supporters, and they honored the original bid for the materials, which at the time, by the time we broke ground right when the pandemic started. So by the time we got to the point where they were framing, the price of lumber had gone up. It was over $60,000.
Yeah.
But McCoy's honored the original price and covered that for us.
That's great. Thank you.
Will you be partnering with the food bank?
I'm sure we'll continue our existing partnership that we have with the food bank, and that we'll refer clients. I don't think it would be the same way that the way the shelter gets food from the food bank to provide food in-house, but we would refer our clients there. The whole idea with this housing is to help them on that next step to another step of independent living. And so that would be that working with the case manager and advocate to get signed up for assistance from the food bank.
Is it completely free, or are they expected to pay utilities or anything?
The utilities will be partially covered by the center. Electricity will not be. The rent is capped out at 30% of their income. However, there is no minimum income requirement. So if someone moves in and they're not working at the time, 30% of zero is zero. We regularly work with our clients in the non-res program to partner with them to get them into programs that can help them with utility assistance if need be. So that would continue.
Do you work with clients to get their belongings from their old home?
We do, yes. We in those situations, if the advocate, the legal advocate works with them to help. Sometimes it involves mediation. Sometimes it involves law enforcement working on it. We do the best that we can on it, but if they can't get all their belongings, we also have a full donation center and work with our partners to provide them with materials. The apartments will be fully furnished as well.
18 months is the max length of time that they can reside there?
That's what we're looking at this point.
Very
We've visited with several other facilities that have this type of housing. They do recommend that we don't sign long-term lease, that you carry it as a month to month, but on average, 12 to 18 months normally has a good turnaround for people in order to get to a position where they're able to move into their own permanent housing.
Well, and I take it you provide a lot of assistance with that as well.
Absolutely, yes. That's from the beginning. They'll have to be working with a case manager, so they'll make a plan to get into, for next steps and work towards it.
Okay, and that's time for that topic. And so then we'll go on to our next presentation, which is for the Children's Advocacy Center, and it'll be Holly Cunningham Kaiser.
Okay. I'm going to try to share my screen again, so if you'll please let me know if you can't see it.
Okay, I will put it in the chat this time. I didn't think of that until after, so I'll do that.
Can y'all see the screen?
It's still changing. Okay, so now it's, I see the picture. Yeah, child-centered trauma.
Okay, did this one come up? Are we good?
Should be good to go.
Right. In 2020, there were 517 children served in Roxanne's house, and of those, 117 were from San Marcos. We conducted 500 forensic interviews. Forensic interviewing is the first step in most child abuse investigations. It's one in which a professional will interview a child to find out if they have experienced abuse. When properly conducted, the forensic interviews are legally sound because they ensure that the interview's objectivity, and they employ a non-leading techniques and emphasize careful documentation of the interview. The forensic interviewer establishes a rapport with the child and evaluates their developmental level and asks questions in a non-leading manner. These interviews are only conducted at the request of Child Protective Services, law enforcement, and occasionally the district attorney's office. We are one of the few children's advocacy centers that has an on-site safe exam room. Medical evaluations are scheduled by law enforcement when there's a reason to believe that a child has been sexually abused. A medical evaluation is an important step for making sure that he or she is healthy, both physically and mentally, and a forensic nurse examiner with advanced training in child abuse will examine the child. We provide non-acute sexual assault nurse exams on site, and those exams are requested by law enforcement when the offense occurred outside of 120 hours. An acute sexual assault exam, which has happened within the last 120 hours, are referred out and conducted on site at Dell Children's Hospital. During our last quarter evaluation, 100% of the children served reported feeling safer after disclosing their abuse and working with a counselor. Roxanne's House employs many types of counseling. They vary based on the counselor's specialty, along with the need of the specific child. These include play therapy, trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, and client-centered talk therapy. An important statistic from the last quarter was that 100% of the children served no longer felt that what happened was their fault, along with understanding that they have a right to their personal space and that it's important for others to respect their bodies. Additionally, we served 402 protective caregivers, and 68 of those were from San Marcos. We encourage the counselors and advocates to work closely with the parents to ensure that the children are receiving the best possible care. The services that we provide at Roxanne's House are crucial to this community because all children deserve to be happy. and safe.
Is that the end of your presentation?
That was the end of that one.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, 5-minute question and answer for Children's Advocacy Center.
So if the alleged assault happened less than 120 hours, the child gets examined in the hospital.
That's correct.
If it's more than 120 hours, it gets examined by your nurse practitioner or whatever the specialist is.
Yes, it's typically the same nurses. It's about the facility requirements in order to collect the type of, to perform that type of exam. If it's under 120 hours, they're looking for internal, it's more of an internal exam and looking for things. And the exams that are conducted on site in our forensic room are for more chronic abuse or abuse, so it's not invasive.
Oh, okay. I was wondering about that.
The main idea with being a center that has one on site is that you want to have a child-centered, child-friendly facility where the child doesn't have to go to a bunch of different places. They can find law enforcement offices intimidating. And so also you don't want them interviewed by multiple people. So law enforcement, prosecutors, CPS all observe the interviews and our interviewers conduct it on camera.
So multiple agencies observe the interview via camera.
Yes, and they're all recorded. So often we'll have detectives that come back or prosecutors that come back, and it takes several months, sometimes years, for these cases to work their way through the criminal justice system so that all that evidence is preserved.
Okay. So this is all done as an outpatient type of arrangement, right?
Yes, ma'am. It's not a true, we're not a medical facility. I mean, we do have a setup for that exam room, but for everything else, it's all counseling is performed outpatient. It's non-res for the kids. And with the current that we are providing both in-person and telehealth counseling, depending on the situation. Some of the kids respond better to in-person. If that's what their needs are, then our counselors meet with them in person.
Okay. And the parents are involved? Well, that's probably too vague a question.
Absolutely. When we say protective caregiver, that's the non-offending custodial, could be a parent, could be a grandparent,
right.
But it's the protective caregiver.
Okay.
In your application in 4A and 4B, it's talking about 140 children and 82 adults. So are the adults the protective caregivers that you're referring to?
That's correct.
Thank you.
And they receive counseling as well. I imagine there's a lot of issues involved around that.
Absolutely. Yes, we provide counseling to both the children and the parents upon request. And parents also can participate in group, as can children. We don't currently have any groups going, but they are looking to have them start back up in the spring. It's difficult to do groups with children via Zoom. They just don't respond to it as well. And honestly, a lot of them have Zoom fatigue at this point, but it's not really all that safe to have a room full of children right now until we get to a better point in the pandemic.
What about siblings that are part of the family unit? Do they also receive services?
Yes, they're eligible to receive services, secondary clients.
I would imagine they're routinely kind of interviewed. If it's one sibling, you kind of at least interview the other siblings to find out, how.
Yes, actually, that's a very large portion of the interviews that are conducted every year are what they call at risk. So if there's been verified an outcry of abuse and it's been verified with one sibling, then they do a risk assessment forensic interview with the other siblings if the perpetrator had access to them.
Okay, and our last one for Hayes Caldwell Women's Center is going to be the non-residential family violence program. Here's Holly Cunningham Kaiser.
I'm going to share my screen one more time. Thank you all for being patient with me with all my video.
Okay, it looks like it's working.
Okay. HCWC has been providing services to victims of family violence since the very beginning, and our earliest partner was the City of San Marcos. The City of San Marcos provided HCWC with the building that housed our first shelter, even though the program did not have community support at the time. In fact, the story is that a bus full of neighborhood people showed up at the city council meeting to protest a house for women of ill repute being opened in their neighborhood. However, the city stood firm and provided us with our first shelter. In 2020, HCWC served 836 victims of family violence, and that includes from our total service area, but all counties, and including both in-shelter and non-residential. That number includes the 298 San Marcos residents that were served strictly in our non-residential family violence program. Family violence knows no socioeconomic or racial group. No one is more likely to experience violence than, no group is more likely to experience violence than another. The following are some stories of our clients that have been served, told by our staff. The following quotes are for clients that were served in the non-residential family violence program during the last year. During our quarterly evaluation, 91% of our clients reported that they were more aware of ways to plan for their safety. Nationally, I believe the numbers are 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men. However, in Texas, it's 1 in 3 women who experience family violence in their lifetime. There's not one of us here that doesn't know someone or have someone in their life that has at some point been impacted by family violence. The biggest gift that we can give is a supportive community for those people that have experienced family violence, and to know that they can find hope and healing.
Okay, and we'll start the 5-minute question and answer period for the non-residential family violence program.
Are you able to provide any face-to-face counseling, or is it strictly I mean, certainly there must be some.
No, for the past 6 months, we've been offering both. You know, we've tried to take every safety measure that we could. We have some clients that just feel like they have a better connection in person. We have others that love Zoom and feel that it works around their schedules better. So in some ways, it's really sounds terrible, but it's been a benefit for us in some ways because we were able to expand services to work with some people that may not have had the capability to get care otherwise. You know, Hays County is a very large county, and so we have clients that from far reaches and in more rural areas that can't always make it during working hours, even expanded working hours. Our counselors always stay late, but so this has enabled them to work with them.
When you say expanded, I saw that it's like a $12,000 increase in funding from this year's amount you asked for compared to last year's amount. Is it because of the expansion, and can you elaborate more?
That's part of it. HCWC, along with many other, especially victim services nonprofits across the state, receive cuts to our federal funding. And so we've had to be a little more aggressive in pursuing local funds to try and offset that to maintain services. The initial cut that they gave us was 15%, which for an agency the size of HCWC was $233,000 and the equivalent of 4 full-time positions, including their benefits. We've since been able to recoup a lot of that, and we are not going to have to cut positions, but we're having to be very aggressive in trying to find ways to offset that.
Are you seeing an increase in the number of people that are seeking services this year than last, or?
We are, and what we saw even last year with the numbers were down, the numbers that are represented in this application were down from our previous years due to the pandemic. But what we saw was an increased level of violence on the cases. So we saw that when people were coming in for services, they had experienced more violent, more worse offenses than they had in the past. But in this past year, with the availability of vaccines and some things returning slightly to normal, we're seeing those numbers go right back up like they were. In fact, I believe last month, which was the last month of the previous fiscal year, we surpassed the numbers. So we had caught back up and moved past it.
Mm.
In the case of the client who was about to be homeless, were they provided financial support?
Absolutely, yes. That was one of the clients that I mentioned actually in the previous application when we talked about the state funding that we had applied for before the pandemic, not knowing how impactful it would be. But it did provide us the capability to get people into housing and provide rental assistance.
Does anybody else have another question? Okay, I'll go ahead and end the question and answer period if y'all are okay with that. I'm kind of looking around. Okay, and so at this point, thank you very much, Holly, for all of your presentations. And what we will do is go on as a board to the discussion section of the agenda. You are welcome to stay and listen. However, we'll not be asking you any more questions directly. And so
thank you all very much.
Thank you. And then I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Mary Earls as the co-chair.
Okay, so we are now at the discussion about the agency's applications and for the purpose of clarification and comparison. All right, so the discussion will be facilitated by Carol, who you guys know is our Housing and Community Development Manager. Hey, Carol, you have the floor.
Okay, and we do have an action item in this section as well. So this part of the discussion, we could do until about 8:20. And so that's about 12 minutes. And then we'll see how it's going. Like, we don't have to cut it off at that point, but I'll just let y'all know, or Diego will let us know when it's 8:20 and we can see if we're at a stopping point. And so then I would just open the floor, especially do y'all have any questions that you wanted to kick around to the other board members? And if not, then comments. I realized it was maybe many similar programs, you know, since they're Hayes Caldwell Women's Center, and then one a little bit separate. What would help you remember these programs or differentiate them as we're going forward? Because it's going to be another month before we come back to this and talk about all the different applicants. What's going to help you remember these?
The one that stuck out for me was the transitional housing, because I think at one time they were giving them vouchers for like deposits or, you know, something like that, helping them get into apartments. But I like the transitional because at least for 18 months, they're able to monitor them, help them save, you know, and I know some of them, when they would transition to the apartments, if they lose their jobs or something, then they would get kicked out, and sometimes they would have to re-enter the center. So I really like this. I didn't know that much about it until I read about it, and then she was able to talk about it. But I like it because I've known some people personally who have were given vouchers to get into apartments, and then they lost their jobs or whatever, or something came up and then they had to move back out. So the 18 months of just being able to monitor them, maybe help them save up so that when they move out of that transitional housing and get into something more permanent, they're able to keep it and maintain it.
Yes, Joanne, I agree. I think it's really exciting to have the transitional housing because I can just tell you from working with clients in the area, HCWC often caps out, they just run out of space. And then there's often like not necessarily a great next step of somewhere to refer them to go to. So this is going to be such a really needed resource for the community. I'm really looking forward to it.
I agree. The transitional housing is a need. I also liked the Roxanne's House, or the Children's Advocacy, due to the fact that they also provide services to the family unit, such as the siblings, as well as the protective parent. And what stands out for me on the Hands of Hope was also a very valuable program, but they're giving the life skills to the clients so that they can become independent, such as the 65-year-old that was taught how to read, as well as that single mother who eventually overcame her obstacles and is now a van driver for the local church and is giving back to the community through their services.
Yeah, with the Hands of Hope, I like that during the COVID shutdown, they were able to utilize the funds that they were given in a more creative way, since they couldn't provide classes for them. I know that I got a call from them. One of the ladies needed furniture. She had left her husband and he took everything. And so it just worked out that I was trying to get rid of my furniture, and they were able to come over to my home and pick up some furniture and other things that they needed. So I like that they provided for them and made sure that they were comfortable and safe during that shutdown period.
I agree. I like that they were responsible with the funding that they had received and weren't going to be able to allocate it to what they had initially been, what the request had been. And so they went to the city and said, can we use it for this other thing? And then they were able to give it out and help people in the crisis that they were in during the pandemic. So I thought that was very responsible use of funds.
Were there any different things that you learned about these different programs that you didn't know before?
Yeah, the transitional housing, I really didn't know how that works. So the presentation really helped clarify a lot. Roxanne House, I have known some people who've gone through that organization. So I pretty much knew how that worked.
When did you say that was going to be complete, the transitional housing? When do they estimate that's going to be complete?
December.
Really?
December.
That's soon.
Yeah. It's been ongoing. It's been a while. Yeah.
So what are they doing in the interim? What are they doing in the meantime?
Well, they have the main
house, but
shelter. And I'm sure they're giving them vouchers or trying to help them find housing when they, when their time is up in that situation. This is what I'm guessing.
Yeah, no.
That's my understanding as well. And unfortunately, due to some of their other funding sources, I think they really are limited with the number of days they can serve an individual client within the shelter. So when their time is up, it really is up, and there's not much they can do.
Yeah.
So the transitional housing is a really opportunity. I mean, they do a lot of work with their clients to try to find some creative solution so they're not just on the street. But yeah, unfortunately for some individuals, there's not it's challenging to find. So the transitional housing is it's a big deal for them to have this, and to have the Head Start Center in association with it is going to be massive for some of those families to be able to work and know that their children are in a safe child environment.
Yeah, the childcare is key to be able to go and work and get on your feet.
Which is not something that is a part of their short-term residential services. They aren't able to provide childcare for I guess it's the McCoy shelter. So they have to find another friend within the shelter to babysit a child or bring the child along, which can be really challenging if you've got to do job interviews or whatever is going on. And if you find yourself in the shelter, it's often because there's not another support system that you have to reach out to. There's not typically another option. So the Head Start Center is it's a huge deal for them to have that. I'm excited for them. Something that comes to mind kind of in general with hearing these applicants, Hands of Hope is one that it came to the forefront. And Carol, tell me if I'm overstepping in my role at all. But I just think a lot about the difference between outcomes and outputs. And not that those are necessarily bad. So like an output is just like a direct number of clients served. And an outcome would be like some larger result that we can say that we are meeting. And Hands of Hope just being one example of many applicants that we've seen. It looks like they don't necessarily have an outcome measure. So they can say we've served this number of clients, but there's not necessarily a measure of what has taken place. Not to say that there's not amazing work that's being done, just a consideration in funding of what that looks like. I think it's a conversation to explore. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, and since we're talking about it, would you talk a little bit more about how outcome is defined and give an example of that?
Sure. So typically there's some sort of outcome measure that is an instrument that is kind of measuring that. So some measure of success that is not just number of clients served. So number of clients served would be like an output, the number of people that have gone through this program. It's just a raw number. An outcome would be some sort of measure that says 60% of individuals that have gone through this program have had success in finding jobs or something. There's often some sort of there's not often some sort of outside instrument measure, but sometimes it can just be, sorry guys, I'm having a hard time thinking of a good example.
No, I think that's what I was thinking you would say,
Yeah.
is, like 60% found a job, or,
Yes.
It's some result that happens.
Right. So it can be, yes, so I guess I misspoke. It can be some sort of outside instrument measure, but it could also just be some sort of percentage of success, some sort of other thing rather than just a raw number of individuals that received services.
We have
Also significant. I just wanted to say, I think it's also significant to say that some programming is not intended to be outcome driven. It really is just a tangible service, right? I think sometimes not to, the food bank could be an example. I'm sure that they also have outcome measures, but an output that's really valuable is to say that we fed X number of individuals. That's a really valuable output to be able to say that. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to only have an output. I just think it's an important thing to consider and look at.
No, it's a measurement of the success of the program. It's something more tangible that you can kind of take a look at.
So I see that it's 8:20. And so are y'all okay with me just turning it back over to Co-Chair Earls so that we can continue on to the next item? I'm seeing some assent.
I'm good.
So, okay. Back over to you.
There you go. So the next action item on the agenda is to hold a discussion among board members to provide direction to staff on whether to reopen the application process for agencies that have applied for Human Services Advisory Board funding in the last 3 fiscal years and which were inadvertently not sent the courtesy notification of the opening of the fiscal year 2021-2022 HSAB application process. So we're going to have an open discussion about whether or not we want to approve the reopening of the application, just what I read. So Carol's going to kind of guide us through it, but I mean, I don't think it should take a long time for us to get through this and make a decision. So the floor is open for any comments.
I can give just the quickest summary ever. You should have received a memo in your packet, and it just talks through what we did as the official notification process, and just the fact that our intention was to send a courtesy notification, as well as the things that we did, like publishing public notices in the newspaper, in the classified section, and then also in the main section of the paper, and so forth, doing social media outreach through our communications office and so forth. We were trying to go that additional step to get the word out to all the agencies that we had on our list. And we've been compiling a list of agencies for the past year and a half since I've been here to have contact information for just anyone we can. And we inadvertently put the Human Services Advisory Board list of people who were prior applicants on the wrong section. So they did not receive the courtesy email that said, hey, our application process is open and here's the application. And so that's what's that question here. We have received applications from other agencies that did not necessarily receive the notification and so forth. And on the other hand, we did happen to notify agencies that had been applicants before, simply because they happen to be on our list already. And so we're looking for just eventually, when y'all are ready, to give us some direction on, yes, we want to reopen it, or no, we don't. So after the discussion, there will be a time to take a motion and a second and vote on it.
I think you said that you had 7 at one time last week. Is there more now?
No, so and it was actually 6. So we re-looked at it. The following agencies did not receive the courtesy notice and have not submitted an application this year. So Any Baby Can, BR3T, Combined Community Action, which is not the same. There's a Community Action of Central Texas and there's a Combined Community Action. Girls Empowerment Network, the Shibe Center, and the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. So that's actually 6.
Okay, I know a couple of years ago, I think Eleanor, I know Mary was a part of this also, where we had an agency, a couple of agencies who missed the deadline. And so it was brought to a vote if we would add them in, and we chose not to because they had missed the deadline, and we thought that that would open up a whole nother can of worms for others to want to submit late as well. I think the reason that I'm voting against opening this up is the same, that it was a courtesy. It's not something that you had to do. And being a part of the grant writing process, we make sure that we, I mean, if the people, the organizations apply every year, and they know that we were going to have this opportunity again this year, I think it was up to them to call, to go by the city or something to see when it was going to open up again due to COVID. And the SHU organization is one. They got in touch with a member to see what's going on, and she was able to tell him, oh, it's open, and he was able to submit his application on time. So because it's a courtesy and not something that a policy that you had to do, I think the submitting would have to fall on the agency and not so much on the city, making sure that they know about it.
I agree. If you are a grant writer or you're familiar with the grant writing process, you know when the season is, and it ultimately should be the organization's responsibility to be proactive and follow up. And if you really want something and you really need something, you are going to be that squeaky wheel. However, I am also on the flip side that I think we should make an exception for this particular year because it was a transitional year. And for fairness and equality, if a courtesy notice was sent out to the other organizations this year, I think we should allow the courtesy notice just for this year, but make it very clear in our policies that this is a courtesy and it will not be extended out in the future years, and that it is the responsibility of the organization, courtesy notice or not, to submit in a timely manner for review. So I'm leaning towards opening it up just for this year, but clearly defining it in policies that it is in the future their obligation to submit in a timely manner.
I was going to ask if it was going to be a standard policy going forward for the city to notify past organizations, if that's something that you're going to continue to do with the courtesy notice. Because I do agree with Monica. I think that I don't know that that's something that needs to continue.
So it is something that we would put in the draft procedures, basically, and then the board will be discussing the procedures. So it's something that I was thinking we would do, but it would really be at the decision of the board whether or not it happens. And so what I'm picturing, as you know, is like we can talk about the procedures after this whole process is over, and I'm picturing that I'll draft them, and then that'll give us something to start with and discuss. But if it's, you know, the board's opinion that that simply doesn't need to happen, then that's one less step that we need to take, and that's fine. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question.
There are grants that I have somebody reach out and tell me to apply for. I'm just going to say that.
Can I ask what the total amount that is of, do you know the total amount of those 6 organizations of what they're requesting?
Oh, I don't, like, I actually didn't think to look at what they requested last year. I can look that up while the discussion goes.
Oh, okay, yes, I'm sorry, obviously, because they haven't done an application for this year. I do know though that just thinking about off the top of my head, like SHIBE is a big dollar amount that's requested every year. Combined Community Action is a big dollar amount that's requested every year. This will make, I don't think I'm voting in this this action item, but just a consideration that will make funding this year more challenging to add more applicants into the pool. And just from what I heard of that list, I think all but Girls Empowerment Network are, oh, Any Baby Can, they're also a high dollar requesting organization. All but Girls Empowerment Network, they were a first-time applicant last year, I believe, but all of the others are multiple year applicant. They are regular applicants. So just pointing those things out. I hear both sides and I really can see both perspectives.
That was part of what I was saying. They know that these grants come up every year. And I think it's up to them, like Monica was saying, to be proactive. Also, we're in the presentation process right now. And so that means that we would have to wait for them to fill out the application, and it would push us back as well, and then have to hear their presentations probably toward the end. I just don't think it's fair, because the other organizations, including the food bank, was able to get their applications in on time, even some who did not receive courtesy calls like the shoe organization. And so now we have to wait, for 6 organizations to go through a process that we've already been through. And now we're in the presentation part. But Monica, I do understand for the one time only, but I just see that other organizations can learn about this reopening. And I don't know what type of argument we would have for them if the city of San Marcos was to tell them no. So do we keep reopening for the ones that missed the deadline? Or do we just go ahead and close it and let them reapply next year? I'm sure that the organizations like SHIBE and others are not going to shut down because they missed not applying for these funds this year.
Well, since it's public funds that we are giving to services for the city of San Marcos, my main concern was that someone can come back and say we were giving preference to certain organizations by giving them the courtesy notice versus the others. And I believe Carol has already outlined the rationale as to we're only going back 3 fiscal years and contacting these previous applicants. And so it is very specific as to who was to receive these courtesy notices. So that could be the response back to someone who says, well, why didn't I get the courtesy notice? Well, if you weren't an applicant within this time period that we specified, that's the reason that you did not get it. And again, it would just be a one-time thing. And Carol, can you clarify why it's 3 fiscal years versus 1 fiscal year?
That was what I thought would be good. So really not a specific reason. I thought, I was just trying to have as broad outreach as possible. And I felt like 4 or 5 years seems a little bit distant, like they may be doing something completely different as a program. But 3 years, that's about right for they may still be interested or doing something similar. So that was my thinking on it. But it was really just an effort to broaden the outreach and make sure that we were getting the word out.
Could we propose that you go back just 1 fiscal year? And would that narrow the list from 6 to maybe a smaller group? Because within the last year, we've been dealing with the pandemic. So some of these, like you said, may not even be interested or, as everyone else has mentioned, these are very well-established programs that have resources. So maybe that's why they didn't apply.
So it would only cut out 1 organization, actually, as far as being in the category of not having received the notice and not having put in an application.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not much of a difference.
Right. I do have the numbers if it will help. I looked it up. It's about $80,000 total if we sent the notice and everybody applied for what they had received last year. And then there's the one that was from 3 years ago. I'm not as sure what they received, but anyway, it's about 80,000 for 5 out of the 6. Do y'all want to go ahead and take a vote? I can turn it back over to Mary and she can take the vote.
Before we take a vote, does anybody else have any comments about this? I know my stand, and but is there any other comments about it?
Well, and I do want to mention, Diego, we have lost Mary. I'm not sure why she's not showing up anymore. So anyway, just sorry, now to go back to the question.
No, I was just wondering if anybody else had any comments about it before we voted, just to kind of see where everybody is on this. I know the reason that I'm voting no, it's not to be mean to anyone, but I just think it's to just a more level playing field with the people now, instead of bringing more people in and more money on top of what we already have.
And I see Alfreda, you have your hand up.
So there was at least 1 agency that didn't get the notice, but they still managed to get their application in on time. So could it still be considered preferential if we accepted them? I think it's up to the agencies to look at their funding sources and say, hey, around this time of year, we start putting in our application. They're not brand new agencies. So, I mean, it's a tough decision, but it's a courtesy, like you said, and ultimately it is up to them to know now is our time to put in our application.
I think that's my argument exactly, that these aren't just, first timers. In fact, most of them have been put in their applications since I've been on this board. The only thing that changed is COVID has pushed it back some, but they, know how to get in touch with the city to see when they're going to be offered the funds again.
Just one more quick question. Has there been in the past agencies that didn't get a notice and were not approved to apply for funding? Has this happened in the past?
Yes, it has once before. I don't know if they got the courtesy call, but I know school fuel was the one that didn't submit on time, and there was another one as well. And so we voted not to allow them to participate in that year's funding, but they came back and participated in the next year.
I have a clarification question. If we were to decide, well, again, I'm not voting, but just curious about the process. If the board were to decide that we did not want to allow these applicants to be considered, is there a process that these applicants could then go to council and request council to turn it over? Like, is there any recourse on their end?
Yeah, good question. That was my question.
Yeah, and I don't, that is a good question. I don't know of any official means by which the council can change what the board is doing in the application process, because this board really does have jurisdiction over the application process. And so I would say there is no, now this is Carol Griffith, the council tends to do what they wish, but there's no means by which they would be able to overturn it, in my understanding. And then there is, of course, the public comment period at the beginning of the council meeting where they just provide an opportunity for anyone to speak. Someone is very welcome to go speak on any topic. And so somebody could go and speak to the council in that manner, but the council generally does not respond to those comments. They just take it in under consideration. And so I would think that what the city attorney would say about that is which is who would make the determination, is that this board has the jurisdiction over this process. And so city council cannot step into the middle of the process to change it. That's what I think. And I'm sorry, Alfreda, do you still have your hand up or is it? Oh, go ahead, please go ahead.
Just one last question. Are these agencies some that can get by without our funding, or is it absolutely necessary to keep their programs going?
That I don't really know, but I do know that the rules of this board are that no one can have more than 50% of their funding from this board. And I do also see that in each case, and I really don't know the budgets, I haven't researched it to that degree, I'm sorry, but the biggest individual amount is like for the Shibe Center, and that's $29,000. Other than that, it's $18,000 for a couple of them, Society of St. Vincent de Paul and Any Baby Can, and it goes down from there. So I would guess that it's not going to impact their ability to operate. It may be a small shift in how they budget for things. That's my guess. If there's no other discussion, I feel like, just to respect our time, I should go ahead and turn it back over to Mary as the co-chair and the chair of this meeting, and have the opportunity for a vote so that we can just put it to rest. So I'll go ahead and do that. So Mary, it's back over to you.
I'm Diego right now because
yeah,
it went out.
Yeah.
My laptop went out. Okay, so are we ready to take a vote? Everybody ready?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I'm trying to think. Megan, were you saying something, Megan? No? Okay. Why don't we, how many board members are in favor or have made a decision to not, as a board member, not reopen the application process after listening to the discussion? Raise your hand.
Mary, I think we need to go ahead and do the whole motion second thing.
Okay.
Oh,
Sorry.
all right. Okay.
So you would just open the
I'll
floor
move.
for a motion and then somebody can move
Can
something.
I get a motion to,
We take a vote on,
no, we have to make a motion.
But, so you don't have to form the motion necessarily. So for example, you can say the floor is open
Do
for
I-
a motion. And then
Okay.
somebody else can say, like Joanne could speak up and say, I move that we do not
Eleanor
open
was-
the process. Or
Eleanor was,
can.
yeah.
Okay, sorry.
So I open up the floor for a motion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then it sounds like I'm agreeing with, okay. I open up the floor for a motion,
That's it.
to,
That's it.
okay. That's
Yep.
it. Okay, go ahead, Eleanor.
I don't know that I know what I'm saying, but I was just gonna move that we take a vote on whether or not to open up the application process again.
Okay, so you, I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's already done. So the floor is open.
Okay.
The motion needs to be either, somebody needs to either say, I move that we do not open the application process up, or somebody needs to say, I move that we do open the application process up.
I move that we do not open the application process up.
Okay, so there's our motion, and then do we have a second for that motion?
I second.
Okay. And
All
now
in
it's,
favor,
there you go.
all in favor, say, but hold your hand up so I can see it. If you're in favor of us not opening up the application process, raise your hand and say it. So how many? That's 1, 2, 3, 4. I can't see. Okay. Monica, no. Okay, I'm sorry to do that. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and all opposed, raise your hand, the signal me. Okay, that's 2. Okay.
That's
So
3.
the motion, I'm sorry, who did I miss?
That's 3.
Oh, I'm sorry, where's,
That's Melina, Monica, and Eleanor.
Melina? Okay, so it was 4 to 3?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the motion carries that we will not be opening up the application process. Okay. I can't
Thank
hear
you.
anybody.
Sorry, that was me. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Okay, good. So then you are ready to go on down the agenda. So on to the
Okay,
reports.
so we're on report.
Yeah.
Do we have any updates from the board members on activities since the last meeting? No? Does any board member have an update for the group? Anybody? I can't see you, Melina, if you're raising your hand.
Do I need to notify the board of some absences, or can I just do that with you, Carol? Just when I won't be in attendance?
Oh, I think you can just do that with me.
Perfect.
And so, yeah, and same for anyone. If you're going to be absent, just let me know.
Okay, so is that considered an update? Where would that go?
Oh, it was a point of order. So in formal Robert's rule, she would have said, I have a point of order. And then she would have asked the question, and then it just is a side topic.
Sorry.
No worries.
Okay, so we're gonna move to future agenda items. Board members may provide requests for discussion items for future agenda in accordance with the board's approved bylaws. No further discussion can be held related to topics proposed until they are posted on future agenda in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act. Does any board member want to request an item for a future agenda? So what Megan said could go on there now? What she
No,
was
so
requesting?
yeah, it wasn't an agenda request. She's not asking to
Just a
put a
question?
topic on an agenda. It was just a question. Just a
Was it
question.
just a question, Megan?
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
What
Right.
about my comment regarding clarifying that agencies should meet the deadlines without the courtesy notice? Would that
You want
be,
that as a,
would that be
an
one of the things
action
we need to
item?
consider as an action item for a future agenda for the
Sure.
policies?
It would be
Sure.
as part of the policy discussion, but it should be, yeah, we can put that in the minutes as a request for a future agenda
Okay.
item as part of the discussion of the,
Yeah, clarifying
procedures.
submission deadlines and courtesy notices.
okay. Yes.
I
absolutely.
agree. Yeah.
Thank you. Now we're going to move to the agenda item called question and answer session with the press and the public.
Oh, and I'm
Okay.
sorry, there are no other attendees. There's no public attending and no press. So you can go on to the next one.
We move to adjournment. Thank you, everybody, for participating this evening. Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move to adjourn.
I
Okay,
second.
Eleanor made a motion. And who was that second? Joanne second. All in favor, say
Aye.
Aye.
Hey.
okay,
Aye.
say nay. Anybody against it, say nay. Okay. We will now adjourn this meeting at 8:49 PM.